They always said the night before a wedding feels like magic, like standing on the edge of a dream before stepping into forever. But for Emily Carter, forever had always been a fragile word. Her parents raised her to fear it. To them, forever meant control. It meant belonging to them, not to herself, and certainly not to another man. She'd spent her life trying to earn their approval, like some fragile creature dancing inside a glass box while her parents tapped at the sides, testing for cracks. Every decision she made, her studies, her friends, even the colors she wore, had to pass through their invisible filter. Yet, when Daniel Hayes came into her life, for the first time, Emily felt something pure, something that didn't need to be approved. Daniel was quiet, patient, with a kind of calm that made her feel safe. He didn't try to fix her, he just held space for her. When he proposed, his hands trembled slightly, and she saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, not of rejection, but of losing her to the world that had already taken so much from her. The ring wasn't extravagant, but it glimmered like a promise, a small rebellion against the cage she had been born into. When Emily told her parents about the engagement, their faces hardened like clay. Her mother, Margaret, pressed her lips into a thin smile and said, "Love fades, Emily, but blood never leaves you." Her father, Frank, said nothing. He just stared at Daniel's photo for a long, silent minute before muttering, "He doesn't look strong enough to handle you." Emily laughed nervously then, brushing off their words as nothing more than habit. But in the back of her mind, something cold began to grow. The week before the wedding, her mother called every day, about the flowers, the dress, the seating chart, but each conversation ended with subtle venom. "Are you sure he's not just after something? You've always been so naive, Emily. He doesn't look like the kind of man who stays when things get hard." Every word was dipped in sugar but carried poison underneath. Daniel noticed her quietness but didn't push. "They're losing control," he told her softly one night as they packed wedding favors together. "And they don't know how to let go." Emily nodded, but she didn't tell him about the dream she had the night before, her mother brushing her hair while whispering, "You'll always be mine." When she woke up, her pillow was wet from tears she didn't remember crying. On the evening before the ceremony, Margaret called again. Her tone was almost kind, warm, even. "Emily, sweetheart, why don't you come stay here tonight? Just one last night in your old room. It's tradition, a bride should spend her final night under her parents' roof." Daniel frowned when she told him. "That's not a good idea," he said immediately. "You know how they—" "I'll be fine," she cut him off, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "It's just one night." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just one night. It was something else. Something unspoken. When Emily arrived at the house, it smelled exactly as she remembered, lavender and dust, a mix of comfort and decay. The hallway light flickered as she stepped inside. Her mother greeted her with open arms, her lipstick the same dark shade of red she'd worn her entire life. Her father stood behind her, his smile thin, like a blade waiting to be unsheathed. Dinner was already set, candles glowing too bright, wine already poured. The atmosphere felt rehearsed. They asked questions about Daniel, about the ceremony, about the honeymoon. Emily answered politely, even laughed when her father told a joke about keeping her husband in line. But beneath the table, her fingers wouldn't stop twitching. The air felt thick, too warm. The shadows on the walls seemed to move when no one did. Her mother's gaze lingered too long, studying her face the way one studies a painting they're about to destroy. "You look different," Margaret said suddenly. "Different how?" Emily asked, her voice tight. "Older. Maybe too old for a white dress." The words hung there like smoke. Frank chuckled, swirling his wine. "You always did take after your mother," he said. "What's that supposed to mean?" Emily asked quietly. "It means," Margaret interrupted, "we just don't want you to embarrass yourself tomorrow. That's all." Her tone was light, but the sting landed deep. Emily lowered her eyes and took a sip of the wine her father had poured for her. It tasted off. Not bad, just strange. Heavy. The conversation blurred. The edges of her vision softened, as though someone had drawn a curtain over her mind. She tried to stand, to steady herself. "Mom, I don't feel." The world tilted. The candles stretched into streaks of light. The room swam in silence. The last thing she saw before the dark swallowed her was her mother's calm, unmoving face, and her father's hand resting gently on her shoulder. When she woke, it wasn't morning yet. The room was cold. Her body ached as if she'd been lying there for hours. She tried to sit up, but her head felt wrong. Her fingers brushed her scalp and froze. It was bare, smooth. A soft, animal-like sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a scream. In the reflection of the mirror across the room, she saw a stranger, a pale woman with hollow eyes, her skull glinting under the dim light. For a heartbeat, she thought she was still dreaming. But then the door creaked open. Her parents stood there, both dressed neatly as if this were just another day. Margaret's voice was calm, too calm. "You needed to be humbled, Emily. You were losing yourself." Her father nodded once, his expression unreadable. No man wants a woman who thinks she can live without her family. Emily pressed her hands to her head, shaking, whispering the same word again and again. "Why?" Her mother tilted her head slightly, eyes cold and gleaming. "Because you forgot who made you." The silence after her mother's words was unbearable. Emily's pulse drummed inside her skull. The air was heavy, almost alive. She could taste metal on her tongue, the lingering ghost of the drug that had stolen her night. Margaret stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the floorboards, each sound slicing through the stillness. "You should thank us," she said, her tone disturbingly calm. "We've saved you from making the worst mistake of your life." Emily blinked, her vision blurring as hot tears spilled down her face. "You shaved my head," she whispered. Her voice cracked, as though the words themselves were too heavy to carry. Frank folded his arms. "Hair grows back. Dignity doesn't." The sentence hit like a slap. Emily's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She wanted to scream, to claw at their faces, to tear the smugness off their calm expressions. But all she could do was stare at them, two people who had once tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, told her stories about angels watching over her. Those angels were gone now. Only monsters remained. Margaret moved closer until Emily could smell her perfume, sharp lilac, the same she'd worn since Emily was a child. "You were forgetting who you are," she said softly. "You're not like those women on television, parading around thinking they're strong. You belong here. With us." Emily's chest tightened. "With you," she hissed. "After this." Her mother's smile faltered for the first time. "You'll understand one day." Frank stepped forward, his face blank. "Get dressed," he said. "Everyone's waiting." Emily frowned. "Everyone?" Her mother's lips curled. "Family breakfast. We thought it'd be important to show them what happens when a daughter forgets where she comes from." The words slammed into her like cold water. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. "You can't." Frank's voice cut through hers, deep and final. "You'll do as you're told." Then he left the room, closing the door softly behind him, as though he hadn't just destroyed his daughter's world. Emily sat on the bed for what felt like hours, trembling. The pale light from the window outlined the shape of her bare skull in the mirror. She looked like a ghost wearing human skin. Every time she touched her scalp, she flinched. The stubble rasped against her fingertips, proof that it wasn't a nightmare. Her thoughts spiraled. What would Daniel say? Would he still want her? Would he even believe her? The mirror gave no comfort. Only reflection. Only evidence. Her stomach twisted violently as she stood. The dress her mother had left on the chair, soft ivory silk, now felt like a cruel joke. She slipped it on with shaking hands. When she opened the door, the house felt different. The air was colder. Every photograph on the wall seemed to watch her. At the bottom of the stairs, voices drifted from the dining room. Laughter, silverware clinking, casual conversation. Emily's hands clenched into fists. When she entered, the noise stopped. Every pair of eyes turned to her. Cousins, aunts, uncles, faces she'd grown up around now frozen in horror. Someone dropped a fork. A child whispered, "Mom, what happened to her hair?" Margaret didn't flinch. She smiled proudly, resting a manicured hand on Frank's shoulder. "This," she said loudly, "is what happens when a daughter forgets who raised her." Emily froze. The humiliation burned hotter than fire. She wanted to vanish, to melt into the floor, but something deep inside her refused to move. She raised her chin. Her mother's smile wavered. For the first time, Emily saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Frank cleared his throat. "Sit down," he said, but his voice lacked the strength it usually carried. Emily didn't move. "Why are you doing this?" she said quietly. Her mother's eyes gleamed. "Because you've become ungrateful. Because you thought you could replace us. You think this will stop me from marrying him?" Margaret's laugh was brittle. "Do you really believe Daniel will still want you? Look at yourself." The room gasped softly, not from agreement, but from horror at the cruelty of it. Emily's throat closed up, her voice trembling. "You've lost your minds." Frank stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. "Enough. You'll eat. Then you'll stay here until you've come to your senses." Margaret nodded. "We'll postpone the wedding. It's for your own good." Those words again, "for your own good." They had haunted Emily her whole life, justifications for every control, every insult, every manipulation. She stepped back, her pulse racing. "You drugged me," she said. Her voice was small, shaking, but real. "You drugged your own daughter." Frank's jaw tightened. "Watch your mouth." Margaret leaned forward, her smile gone now. "You're confused, sweetheart. You were tired. You needed rest. You'll feel better once you stop fighting us." Emily stared at her, really stared. And for the first time, she saw the truth clearly. Her mother didn't believe she was doing something wrong. She believed she was saving her daughter from independence. A shiver crawled up Emily's spine. If she stayed here, she might never leave again. She turned and ran. Her parents shouted her name, but she didn't stop. Her bare feet slapped against the cold wood of the hallway, the front door growing larger and larger, until Frank's hand grabbed her arm and yanked her back. She screamed, the sound raw and animal, twisting in his grip. "Stop!" Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. "You'll wake the neighbors." Emily's breath came in gasps. She looked into her father's face, blank, cold, mechanical. There was no love there. Only ownership. "Let me go," she whispered. He didn't. Her nails dug into his wrist until blood beaded beneath her fingertips. He shoved her backward, not hard, but enough to make her stumble. She hit the wall, her shoulder slamming into the frame of a family photo. It cracked. The smiling faces inside, her younger self, between her parents, split down the middle. Something inside Emily broke with it. She didn't cry. Not this time. She looked at the picture, at the ghost of the family they once pretended to be, and whispered, "You'll never own me again." Margaret's expression changed. Confusion, then something like fear. But before she could speak, Emily walked past them, opened the door, and stepped into the cold dawn. The sky was gray. The world felt strangely quiet, as though it, too, was holding its breath. Barefoot, head bare, heart shattered, Emily Carter walked away from the house that had built her cage. She didn't know where she was going, but for the first time, she wasn't being told where to go. The street was empty when Emily stumbled out into the dawn. Barefoot, shaking, the cold bit into her skin like punishment. Every breath came out as mist, trembling in the pale air. She didn't know how long she walked, only that she had to keep moving. If she stopped, they'd find her. Cars passed occasionally, but none slowed down. Maybe they saw her, a woman in a torn dress, scalp raw and gleaming, eyes wild, and thought she was a ghost crawling out of someone else's nightmare. By the time she reached Daniel's apartment, the sun was climbing weakly above the rooftops. Her hands shook as she rang the bell. Once. Twice. The door opened. Daniel stood there, sleepy, barefoot, wearing only a t-shirt, and froze. For a heartbeat, he didn't recognize her. Then his face broke. "Emily!" She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Her lips trembled. They. He pulled her inside before she could collapse. The next hours were a blur. Warmth. Blankets. The scent of coffee. Daniel's hands, gentle, trembling, touching her face like it might shatter if he pressed too hard. She sat on his couch, wrapped in one of his hoodies, knees pulled to her chest. Her scalp stung from where the razor had scraped it. The silence between them was thick, not out of anger, but disbelief. Daniel finally whispered, "Who did this?" Emily's voice cracked. "My parents." He didn't move for a long time. Then he stood, pacing the room like he needed motion to keep from exploding. "You're telling me they drugged you? Cut your hair off?" She nodded slowly. Tears slid down her cheeks, silent, helpless. "They said I didn't deserve to leave. That I belonged to them." Daniel turned, eyes dark, fists clenched. "Jesus Christ!" He stopped mid-sentence, his jaw tightening. "We're going to the police." "No." Her voice was sharp, desperate. Daniel froze. "What do you mean, no?" She swallowed hard, looking away. "They'll twist it. They always do. They'll say I'm unstable, that I imagined it. You don't know what they're like. They have friends everywhere." He knelt beside her, trying to catch her gaze. "Emily, they hurt you. This isn't something you just walk away from." Her lip quivered. "If I go to the police, they'll come after you too." He stared at her, torn between rage and heartbreak. Finally, he exhaled slowly and sat beside her. "Okay," he said. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." For the first time since she'd opened her eyes in that cold bedroom, Emily felt her lungs fill properly. But even as she leaned into Daniel's warmth, the weight of what had happened sat inside her like a stone. Every time she blinked, she saw her mother's face, calm, perfect, proud of what she'd done. By noon, the news had spread. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Messages from relatives, co-workers, even the wedding planner. "Are you okay? Is it true? Why did you cancel the wedding?" Cancel. The word stabbed her. She hadn't canceled anything. When she finally looked online, her stomach dropped. Her mother had posted on Facebook a photo of a bridal bouquet and a long, manipulative caption. "Sometimes, love isn't enough. Sometimes, as parents, we must protect our children from their own mistakes. Emily is safe and recovering. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time." Daniel's hand tightened around her phone when he saw it. "She's painting herself as the victim." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "She always does." Then she whispered, "They took everything from me, even the story." Daniel's voice softened. "Then take it back." That night, she couldn't sleep. The shadows on the ceiling shifted with the streetlight outside, forming strange shapes, her mother's silhouette, her father's cold stare, the glint of scissors. Her heart raced. She sat up, gasping, drenched in sweat. Daniel stirred beside her. Nightmare. She nodded, unable to speak. He reached out, brushing his thumb against her scalp. She flinched, not from pain, but memory. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For not being there. Emily shook her head. You couldn't have stopped them. Maybe not, he said, voice thick with anger. But I swear to you, they'll never touch you again. In the following days, Emily stayed inside Daniel's apartment. He went out only to get food or pick up her things. Each time he returned, she felt a rush of relief, like a small piece of safety returning with him. But the mirror was still her enemy. She'd catch her reflection, the uneven shadow of her hair, the bruises on her arms, and look away quickly, ashamed. It wasn't vanity, it was mourning. She didn't just lose her hair, she'd lost her image, her sense of self. One morning, Daniel brought her a small box. Inside was a short, dark wig. Simple, natural. Emily stared at it for a long time. You think this will fix it? She said quietly. No, he replied. I just want you to see yourself again. Her throat tightened. She put it on, her hands trembling. When she looked in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize the woman staring back, but there was something in her eyes now. Not innocence. Not fear. Something sharper. A seed of anger. And under that anger, power. Days turned to weeks. The bruises faded. The hair began to grow back, soft against her scalp. But Emily didn't forget. Each night, she replayed that dinner, her mother's smile, her father's silence, the moment the scissors sang against her skin. Daniel noticed the way her expression hardened when she sat alone. You're thinking about them again, he'd say softly. She'd nod. They think they ended me. He reached for her hand. Then prove them wrong. Her eyes met his, dark, burning. Oh, I will. The invitations had been sent months ago. The date, engraved on crystal, was supposed to mark the happiest day of her life. Instead, it became the day she decided to reclaim it. When Emily looked at the calendar again, she realized something strange. The wedding was still scheduled. Guests were still expecting a ceremony. Her parents hadn't canceled it. They had simply replaced her silence with their narrative. The wedding was postponed for health reasons, her mother had written in an email to relatives. Our daughter isn't ready. We'll announce a new date soon. They were keeping her story alive, but only so they could rewrite it. Emily stared at the screen, her reflection flickering faintly on the glass. She could see the scar near her temple, the slight unevenness of her growing hair. But she didn't look broken anymore. She looked awake. That night, she turned to Daniel. I want to go, she said. He looked up from the couch. Go where? To the wedding. Daniel blinked. Emily, what are you talking about? She met his eyes, calm and unwavering. They think I'm hiding. They think I'm ashamed. I want them, all of them, to see what they did. He hesitated. That's dangerous. I'm done being afraid. Daniel studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Then I'm coming with you. The morning of the ceremony, the sky was heavy with gray clouds. The wind carried the faint smell of rain, cleansing, sharp, like the world itself was bracing for something. Emily dressed simply, black trousers, a white shirt, and a short dark coat. No veil, no makeup, no jewelry. She didn't want to look like a bride anymore. She wanted to look like truth. She placed her wig on the table and left it there. Her bare scalp glowed faintly under the dim light, no longer something to hide but to reveal. When Daniel saw her, he froze. You look powerful. Emily smiled faintly. For the first time, I feel it. The venue was a garden, white chairs, flower arches, the faint sound of a string quartet rehearsing. Her parents had turned it into a performance, an illusion of purity. When she stepped out of the car, Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People turned, whispering. Margaret was the first to see her. She froze, hand halfway to her wine glass. "Emily!" Her voice was small, almost human. Emily walked closer, the gravel crunching beneath her shoes. Surprised. Frank stood, his expression hardening. "You shouldn't be here." "Oh, but I should." She stopped in front of them, her voice steady. "You wanted everyone to see me, didn't you? To pity the poor, broken daughter who lost her mind." Margaret's jaw tightened. "We were protecting you." Emily laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "You don't protect someone by destroying them." A few guests gasped. Others looked away, pretending not to hear. Margaret's mask began to crack. "Lower your voice, Emily." "No." It was a small word, but it silenced the air. Even the musicians stopped. Daniel stepped closer, standing beside her, quiet, unflinching support. Emily took a deep breath. "You drugged me. You cut my hair. You humiliated me in front of your family, all because you couldn't stand the thought of me leaving." Her mother's face drained of color. "That's not true." "It is." Emily's voice trembled but didn't break. "You made me believe love was control. You made me afraid of my own freedom. But I'm done being afraid of you." Frank's voice rose. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," she said, turning to the crowd. "I'm showing you what real shame looks like." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. With a single tap, the recording began to play, her mother's voice from that night, calm and venomous. "You needed to be humbled, Emily. You were losing yourself. No man wants a woman who thinks she can live without her family." The words echoed through the garden, soft but unmistakable. Gasps. Murmurs. Silence. Margaret staggered backward, face pale. "You recorded." "Yes," Emily cut her off. "Because I knew one day you'd try to pretend none of it happened." Frank moved forward, but Daniel stepped between them. "Don't." Emily's heartbeat roared in her ears. Every muscle in her body shook, not with fear, but release. She turned to the crowd once more. "This was supposed to be my wedding day," she said softly. "But instead, it became the day I learned the difference between love and control." Her eyes met her mother's. "You taught me what love isn't. And for that, I'll never forget you." She turned, took Daniel's hand, and began to walk away. No music played. No one spoke. Only the sound of her footsteps, steady, final, echoed through the garden. The rain began to fall as they reached the car. Soft at first, then heavier, washing over her skin, cooling the fire that had burned for weeks inside her. Daniel opened the door, but she paused, looking up at the sky. Water ran down her face, mixing with tears she didn't even realize she was crying. "It's over," he said quietly. Emily shook her head. "No," she whispered. "It's just beginning." She turned, looking back one last time at the white chairs, the fading flowers, the stunned faces beneath umbrellas. Her mother stood in the distance, drenched, staring after her. For the first time, Margaret looked small. Emily smiled faintly, not out of cruelty, but peace. Then she got into the car and drove away. Months passed. Winter came and went, leaving the city covered in a thin layer of silver. Emily Carter was no longer a bride, no longer a daughter, and not yet someone new. She lived quietly in a small apartment on the east side, working in a bookstore, drinking too much coffee, and learning to breathe again. Her hair had started to grow, short, dark, defiant. She didn't hide it anymore. The first time she went out without a hat, people looked, but she didn't flinch. Freedom, she discovered, wasn't loud. It was silent, patient, a slow unlearning of everything she had been taught to fear. Daniel stood by her through the quiet months, never pushing, never prying. Sometimes he'd catch her staring out the window, lost in the space between past and present, and simply say, "You're still here. That's enough." But Emily didn't want to just be here. She wanted to reclaim what had been stolen, her story, her dignity, her truth. One evening, while cleaning through her old things, she found the file Daniel had helped her make, the audio recordings, the photos, the timeline. For months she hadn't touched it, afraid that opening it would open the wound again. But when she clicked play, something inside her shifted. Her mother's voice filled the room once more, calm, righteous, cruel. "We saved you from yourself." Emily's lips curved into a faint smile. Not anymore. She didn't go to the police. She went to the truth. She wrote. At first, it was only fragments, diary entries, letters she'd never send, pieces of the night that refused to fade. But the words grew, taking shape, forming a story. By spring, she had a manuscript, The Poisoned Night, A Daughter's Awakening. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Daniel read the first draft in silence. When he finished, he looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Are you sure you want to publish this?" Emily nodded. "It's not just my story anymore. It's every girl who was told to stay quiet." The book came out under her full name. No pseudonyms. No disguises. The reaction was immediate. Interviews. Articles. Messages from strangers who had lived their own versions of her nightmare. She didn't expect fame, but the world had a strange way of rewarding honesty once it no longer benefited the liars. Her parents' circle, the same people who once whispered admiration for their perfect family, now whispered something else. Pity. Disgust. Curiosity. Margaret and Frank Carter withdrew from public life. The family business faltered. Clients disappeared, reputation shattered. They tried to deny it all at first, to call her a liar, a dramatist. But the recording, the one she'd played at the wedding, had already spread online. There was no coming back from that. One morning, Emily received a letter. No name, no return address. But she knew the handwriting. "You've ruined us. Are you happy now? You were always too dramatic, too emotional. I only wanted to protect you. You'll regret this one day." Emily folded the paper neatly, placed it in a drawer, and whispered, "You can't hurt me any more." Then she closed the drawer, softly, like sealing a tomb. That evening, she went to the mirror. She looked at herself, the short hair, the faint scar near her temple, the calm in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she didn't see a reflection made of fear or obedience. She saw herself. She whispered, "I survived you." And she smiled. Months later, she stood on a small stage at a local bookstore, her bookstore now, reading a passage from her book. "They cut my hair to make me small. But I grew in every direction they couldn't reach." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. In the back of the room, Daniel stood, arms crossed, smiling. When their eyes met, she didn't see pity. She saw pride. After the event, a young woman approached her, eyes glistening. "Your story saved me," she said. "I thought I was alone." Emily took her hand gently. "You're not. You never were." Later, as the evening sun painted the city in shades of gold, Emily stepped outside. The air smelled like rain again, the same kind of rain that had fallen on her the day she walked away from her parents' house. She tilted her head back, letting the drops hit her face, smiling through them. The world was still imperfect. The pain hadn't vanished. But she was free. And that, she realized, was the truest revenge of all.